Hello, I'm Refashionista Sheri, and you may be wondering why the heck am I holding a bag full of granny squares, and even more so, why am I wearing sunglasses indoors? Well, the granny squares are because they have to do with today's project, and the sunglasses are because I'm having some kind of allergic reaction to something and my eyes are all gross and puffy and disgusting, and you don't need to see that, but as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to get it sorted out. So hopefully all will be back to back to normal next week. Anyway, so because I'm having a hard time, seeing right now, I clearly didn't make a brand new video. So what we're going to do instead is jump off of the short that I recently shared that featured all of these, and I said, hey, what the heck should I do with this bag of granny squares I've had that I thrifted years ago? And you guys came up with so many great ideas. I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a compilation video for you guys so you can see all of my groovy granny square projects where I upcycled some of these, I used thrifted blankets, and it's just a whole bunch of fun. So grab your granny squares and get making. For this insanely fast project, all you need is your funky granny square blanket and a pair of scissors. Alrighty, so you want to find a blanket that when it's folded in half, like this one is folded in half lengthwise, you can kind of, see yourself wearing it as a poncho or a sweater. So the length is just about perfect on this one. And then to find the middle-ish square, all I'm going to do is fold it in half again, like so. So now it is double folded. And you know what's great about granny squares? You could actually not even fold this at all and just kind of count the squares to find the middle square. But I folded it already, so let's just do it this way. Okay, so you see where my finger is right here? This square right here is going to be the middle square. So I'm just going to pinch it with my finger till I get back over to my table. Okay, so here is my center square, and you can see here very easily, because it's different colors, that here is the yarn from the center square that is attaching it to the square on this side, and here on this side, and here and here. So you just want to chop that connecting yarn of the center square. You do not want to chop any of the other squares because, again, this is a no-sew project, so you're only cutting the yarn that is attached and holding that center square. So let's see if we can get closer here so you can kind of see it better. Now, for anyone who doesn't crochet, like I do not crochet anything beyond a chain stitch so far, but I'm trying to learn, this is kind of a really easy way to make yourself some awesome crochet granny square gear, and I just love it so much. And I really love the fact that you can go in a thrift store, find something like this that was clearly made with a lot of love and took a lot of time, and you can give it a new life and give it a new purpose for something that you will actually love and even wear. Okay, so let's make our first cuts here. Cut that, and it should come out nicely. Gotta cut it again. And I'm just going to go all the way around the outside and cut all of these. And then I will go back later and remove the excess bits of yarn. Okay, so now our center bit is removed, and I mean, you can even use this now. You can use it as a little trivet or heating pad or a coaster, whatever you want. Just, clean up those edges, remove this, and you have your nice little finished edge and a little mini granny square. Okay, so to remove this part, you just want to kind of carefully, let's do this one here, carefully chop through and pull that out, and that yarn should come right out of those loops. And you see here now we are left with this nice finished edge here. So now I'm just going to go remove the rest of these loops, and then we can put it on. And there is our finished head hole, and it definitely is going to stretch wide enough to get on and off of my head. For this upsizing project, all you need is your 2 tight pants and a whole bunch of granny squares. So can we just take a minute here and appreciate this very cool vintage label here? Mr. Leonard by Len Vasa. And I mean, like, how cool is that? And look, even made in Canada, which is why the label is in French and in English. Now, I know I have already done a trouser upsizing tutorial for my 30 days of refashions, but I've had these in my stash for way too long, and I have been wanting to use these granny squares for something forever. And again, I still have so many left, so there will be probably more projects coming up soon. But I figured I have enough of the kind of black border ones to go down the sides. So let's do an experiment and see, can I successfully upsize these trousers, which are fully like 1970s polyester, with these stretchy crocheted granny squares. I'm not exactly sure it'll be successful, but if it is, it's gonna look cool. So let's give it a try. So because these are 2 at a time, it's gonna make life a little bit easier, I think, because I'm gonna have to stitch them all together. So I'm gonna just start right at the top of the waistband here and go all the way down the side of one leg of the trousers to get the kind of approximate length that I'm going to need. So I know how many I need to stitch together. Oh, and then we can sort them out after that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Not too bad. So it's going to take 8 granny squares in total down each side of my legs. And I do have, actually, look, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have exactly that amount. So this project was meant to be. I have exactly the right amount to upsize these trousers. That is amazing. So I have flipped the trousers inside out just to check out the side seams here and remove them. And I think I seriously can just kind of take my seam ripper and zip right through, because these are huge stitches and they are very old. And look at this. I did a little kind of experiment already on the bottom, and I mean, I barely need my seam ripper to get these stitches out. So I'm going to go do that on both sides, remove the side seams. So now I have reached the waistband, and I'm just going to chop straight through, following the side seam opening. So I have stitched all of my granny squares into their great big long lengths here. Now let's go insert them into the trousers. So just the same as I always do, I have my trousers with the waistbands lined up, because as you know, I do kind of tend to sometimes put things in the wrong way. So it's always a good idea to have your front and back waistbands lined up correctly. And then I'm just going to put my granny square lengths here with the right sides facing, like so, and then go stitch all the way down that side, then put this side together and stitch all the way down this side to create my side panels, and then repeat everything on the other side of the trousers. So, not every refashion has to be a rousing success, right? And here's the proof. It looks good. It does. The inserts look really good, but I somehow seemed to make this like 3 or 4 sizes too big for me. Like, what? Anyway, so if you guys have any ideas of how I can oh my God, how I can make this actually fit me, I do of course really want to wear it, because look at how awesome it looks with my granny square vest. I mean, that's just perfect. But yeah, so I don't know if I can add some kind of darts here, or I don't know, in the back if I can. Seriously, help me out, please, and let me know. What do you think I can do for these pants? Because they did come out good. They just came out much too big for me. I was a little bit too generous with my upsizing this time. So to create this adorable, quick and easy project, all you need is your granny square blanket, a loose-fitting, comfortable sweater to use as a template, and your hand sewing gear. Okay, so the very first thing you need, of course, is your awesome granny square quilt. And I mean, you can use pretty much any size. The only thing that is very important is when it is folded in half with the fold at the top, you need to be able to kind of hold it up to your body and see that, yes, there is more than enough room here to make sleeves and for it to go around your body, because, you know, we're gonna make it into a shirt, or I guess a granny square sweater. So the first step is to simply fold your blanket evenly in half. So right now you want to have the fold at the top of the blanket, and this fold is actually going to become the kind of head hole and shoulder area of your top. Okay, so to find the center square, which is going to become the head hole, it's actually super easy. There's two ways to do so. If your blanket is like mine and has an odd number of squares going across the top, mine has 7, all you have to do is count 1, 2, 3 from one side and 1, 2, 3 from the other side, and there's my center square. If your squares are even numbered, it's a little bit trickier, but still super duper easy. All you have to do is fold your blanket in half again, and the square at the folded point corner is your center square. As you can see, there you go, there's my center, and same thing if it's folded. So now, just like my no-sew granny square poncho, we want to remove this center square to create our head hole, and you know, it is super duper easy. The other one was actually easier because the yarn was a different color here. Here it's black, so I gotta kind of try to find where it is connected, and you only want to be cutting the yarn on the center square where it is connected. That way the squares on either side will still remain totally intact, and you won't have to, you know, finish any of the seams. It'll already be done. All right, so I think let's go for this one here. And aha, yay, it's coming out. So I'm just gonna continue and remove all of the yarn that's connecting my center square. So just to prove beyond any shadow of a doubt once again that I am not perfect at all and I make mistakes all of the time when I'm refashioning, yeah, I thought, hey, I'm gonna be clever, and I snipped a piece of yarn and pulled it, and look what happened. It started taking off this square as well. So I'm gonna have to stitch this back together. And yeah, so just here's a lesson: pay attention to what you're doing, and if you need to tie the yarn off, make sure you tie it off, don't just pull it out. And I now have the perfect head hole, and it is nice and stretchy, so it's more than wide enough to go over my head. So clearly I have now popped my granny square quilt over my head, and the neckline looks great. And now we're going to create the side seams, because just like this, it's a poncho and we're making a sweater. Okay, so there's two ways you can do this. Very, very easy. First way is to just kind of lift your arms up and match up the corners, and then just kind of pin it where you would like, you know, your side seams to start at the bottom, and then put another pin at your kind of underarm area, and then you're just going to stitch it. That's it. Super duper simple. But I have a more precise way of doing this, so let's go back to the table. So for this next method, you're going to need your quilt folded in half with the right sides facing. Now, sometimes it can be difficult to figure out what is the right side when you're dealing with like quilts or tablecloths or linens of just about any kind. with something that is knit or crocheted like this, it's actually kind of simple. You just want to find which side has the most ends tied off on it. So like this one, there's one here, there's another one here, there's another one here. So this is definitely going to be the inside of my sweater, which is why I have it folded now with the right sides facing. Okay, now we can grab our oversized sweater and we're going to use this as the simple template. So you want to have the collar areas lined up as best as you can. I mean, this has a much wider collar than this, so we're just, guesstimating. Nothing has to be super duper amazingly perfect at this point. Okay, so then you want to check the side seam and sleeve area and see where exactly do they kind of fall on top of the quilt. And it's going to be this area that you're going to be removing to create your side seam and sleeve. Now, there's a couple different ways to do this, and you can simply pop a little pin in there to mark the spot, or I'm lucky with mine here, and I can see that it is simply these bottom two squares that need to be removed. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to carefully take out these two squares on both sides, and yeah, just do the exact same method that I did to remove the collar square, and then we will move on to the next step. So now that I have my pieces removed from the front and the back, and it was so easy, plus because I did the same method as I did to do the head hole, all of my edges here are finished already, so I don't have to worry about fraying. Just maybe a bit here on the very, very bottom and here at this hem, but I will just do some extra stitches to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, so now I just gotta hand stitch this together, and I always like to use a whip stitch when I am sewing knits. And again, this is so easy. We're just gonna put our thread through and anchor the thread. If you don't know how to do stitches, hand stitching, then I would highly suggest actually enrolling in my Refashioning 101 e-course, because everything is in there showing exactly how to do, oh, I don't know, loads. I don't even know how many. There's so many hand stitches in that course, as well as, of course, machine stitching and everything else that goes along with refashioning. So again, link is down below for my Refashioning 101 e-course. And yeah, I'm just gonna continue stitching this closed, then I'm gonna go repeat the whole process on the other side. So I now have both sides chopped and stitched together. So let's flip it right side out. Oh, that looks great. That looks great. Look at that. Perfect, perfect. For this quick and cozy project, all you need is a granny square quilt, your scissors, and your hand sewing gear. So because my quilt is actually a rectangle shape, I'm going to be chopping it through the longest side. Now, if you are using a quilt that's more of a square, it really doesn't matter, but because I want my finished scarf to be as long as possible, I'm going to be chopping it on the longest length. My quilt also has an uneven number of squares here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can't just simply chop this in half, because then these center squares here would all be fraying and it would look terrible. So what I'm going to do is count 1, 2, 3 on one side, 1, 2, 3 on the other side, and then I know that I'm going to remove this center section of squares here, and then I won't have to bother finishing the edges because they'll already be finished. I will, however, have to do some minor hand stitching here on the edges that get chopped just so they don't fray. So now we can actually get chopping. And I love it when the granny squares are attached with contrasting yarn here, because it makes it so much easier. So I can see that the gray is actually the finished edge on both side granny squares here. So all I have to do is chop all of these teal blue pieces of yarn, and then I will still retain my finished edge. So for now, I'm just going to leave this border because I want to chop it and stitch it right away to prevent the fraying. So I'm just going to continue chopping all the way down, and yeah, then I'll come back and we'll see what we do next. So I have my center squares totally removed, and I did go ahead and I just did a really quick blanket stitch on the corner edges here just so they wouldn't fray. And now I have the two pieces with the right sides facing, and I am slowly and carefully doing a whip stitch along one edge to make it into one long length. Now, if you're not comfortable with hand stitching, you can still easily make this because there are these nice wide holes here. You can simply take some yarn, put it through, and, you know, do like basically wide stitches, right? The hole for the stitch is already there. You don't need a needle. Poke some yarn through, loop it around, poke it through the next hole, and then once you get to the end, just knot it off. So now it is all stitched together, and that looks fantastic. So let's go try it on and style it up. How awesome did this come out? Like, the stitching is great. It's totally invisible, and this side totally finished, and this side that I chopped totally finished. And I don't really care if it doesn't have the same border on it. Anyway, this is so super cozy and so super long. And I love granny square upcycles. They're just the greatest. And again, thrift shops are full of these. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I like to wear my super long scarves. All right, so we have the center area in the front. I'm just going to pop it around my neck, then turn around and see I've twisted that around my neck and I brought these to the front. Okay, I'm going to loosen this a little bit and take one side. Tuck it down through that front loop. Take the other side, tuck it down through that front loop. Okay, now these are pretty even in the front, and now I can grab the back area. You see this was here? I just grabbed that, and I'm gonna pull it over my head, and I've just created a lovely little hood for myself, and my neck is covered back here, and all my entire back of my head is covered. Like, how absolutely fantastic is that? For this quirky cardigan project, all you need is your knit blanket, a pair of scissors, and your hand sewing gear. If you are unsure about hand sewing, go ahead and download my Sewing Basics ebook. So because I already made this granny square blanket into a no-sew poncho, my general neckline area here is already done. So all I have to do is remove these squares here to open up the front to create my cardigan. So now I have to remove all of these granny squares that are in this line on the front to open it up to be the cardigan, right? So all I'm going to do is the exact same thing I did with this one, and I'm just going to chop the gray yarn and gently pull it out of the green yarn here. So then that way I will still have this nice finished edge all the way down the front of my cardigan, and I won't have to try to faff about trying to crochet it closed, which I really am terrible at doing. Okay, so I'm going to continue doing this. It does take a while because, you know, you got to be careful. You're not cutting things that shouldn't be cut. And once this is all removed, we will come back and do the next step. Okay, now that the front bit has been removed here, you can definitely see how this could pretty easily be turned into a cardigan. Or I can see it. I mean, it's in my head. It's already done in my head. So fingers crossed that what's in my head is actually going to work when we try to do it on the actual blanket here. So let's pop back over to the table and see what's next. So my table definitely wasn't big enough to lay it flat, so I have put it on the floor, and you can see here I have these two front flaps folded over at the top. There is the open center part there, and now I need to go grab a loose-fitting jacket to use to create my side seams and sleeves. So I decided to use my super fluffy faux fur Cookie Monster jacket because it is so loose and wide and perfect, I think, for a cardigan template. So all I did here was line up the collar with the collar area of my soon-to-be cardigan, and then I simply came over here and I popped a pin at the edge point, the side seam area here of my jacket, and then another pin right there at around the underarm seam area. And you can see here now, I'm pretty much going to be chopping out these 2 rows of 3, and I'm going to do that on both sides of my soon-to-be cardigan. How perfect does that look? That's definitely looking like a cardigan now. And all I have to do is go stitch this seam together here and that seam, and that will create my side seam and my sleeves. And I'll do that on both sides. And I'm going to use a blanket stitch because, well, this is a blanket. And again, if you don't know how to do any sort of cool hand stitches, grab my Sewing Basics ebook or take my Refashioning 101 e-course. How absolutely adorable is this? Come on, this came out so perfect. The only thing that I'm not happy about are the sleeves, because of course they are just a little bit longer than my elbow, but you know what? I still have those side pieces that I chopped, so let's go figure out how we can use them to extend my sleeves, and maybe I can make some funky bell looking sleeves, so let's get to it. So I have 4 of the chopped out side pieces here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I did was I grabbed 2, popped them together with the right sides facing, and then using my funky little blanket stitch, I stitched the open sides together and I created these little sleeve cuff tubes. And I think these are actually wide enough that I can make them bell out a little bit, which is so super cool. So I now have 2 fabulous sleeve cuff tubes, and now it's time to stitch them onto the sweater sleeves. So I have my sweater laying right side out, and I have my sleeve cuff inside out, and now I'm just going to pop the sleeve cuff over the end of my sweater sleeve, and I'm going to match up the chopped edge here with the hem of my sleeve, and you can see I'm going to have to gather it just a little bit here as I'm stitching, or maybe I can just even stretch that to match, but it's going to have a slight bell, which I love so much. And yeah, now I'm just going to go stitch this on, repeat on the other side, and then we're going to try it on and style it up. I sincerely hope you enjoyed that fantastic granny square tutorial roundup. And as I said previously, hopefully, fingers crossed, all will be back to normal with my face very soon. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and I'll catch ya on the zigzag. My eyes are really, really gross under here.
This is Confessions of a Refashionista.